So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Richard Taylor, and I'm back with another follow-up video on the Wayne County Sheriff's Department and the recent investigation, the arrest of several deputies, and much, much more. Now, yesterday I did a follow-up on Mike Cox's bond hearing, in which two of the men who were listed as his informants were identified by District Attorney Dennis Duffy in federal court hearing on Wednesday. The New North covered that hearing, and they put out an article detailing all of the facts that I went over in the last video. And a lot of people I won't say a lot of people, I received a couple of calls from people who were, I guess, disturbed, for lack of a better word, that I mentioned the guys' names in that indictment. And first of all, I think I was very respectful in my commentary on the article. Because once again, the article is public knowledge. If I didn't talk about it, someone was going to get hold of this article and post those pictures or what have you. I think I posted and talked about the subjects in a very respectful manner, even sometimes advocating for them because of their relationship with this corrupt individual. So nevertheless, because I don't want to offend anyone anymore, even though once again, if you go through the 55-page federal indictment, only thing you have to do is Google the particular incidents that are listed in the indictments, and the names of the persons that are involved in those instances would come up. So, like I said, I knew the names before I did the video yesterday, but because they had not been released to the public by the courts or some other source, I respectfully did not mention their names. But because yesterday those names were mentioned in a federal courtroom, which is public record, then I decided to mention those names. Nevertheless, I'm going to continue because one person who did call me about that, she mentioned, what about the other players in this indictment or in this corruption? Because keep in mind, those gentlemen that I mentioned yesterday, they are just pawns in the political or the judicial drug game. This goes much deeper than those two individuals. This goes much deeper than Mike Cox and Chris Worth. It goes much deeper because these things don't happen unless there are higher-ups involved or turning a blind eye. You don't get this type of coercion and cooperation and lack of prosecution without collusion from everybody involved. So I'm going to go back through this indictment. As you see the caption, there are a couple of individuals, or one in particular, because his name was released in the indictment in the bond hearing article yesterday. So I'm going to mention his name, but there are several other people who may need to be outed, for lack of a better word, in this indictment. So I'm going to start back with the original indictment, and I'm not going to say the names. Once again, if you've been in Goldsboro for the past 5-6 years and you have any dealings with the streets, you probably heard this name in this capacity before. But once again, I don't want to be anybody's bad guy for speaking the truth, for speaking knowledge that pretty much everybody already knew. So nevertheless, I'm gonna start by talking about this subordinate one who was listed in the indictment as Michael Cox, subordinate one. Now, it says in paragraph 27, it says in approximately late 2015, the sheriff began an internal investigation of allegations that drug unit subordinate one was being paid by a methamphetamine dealer to provide advance warning of planned arrests and searches. At the request of Wayne County Sheriff's Office, the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation assigned an agent to assist in the investigation. Drug Unit Subordinate 1 became aware of the SBI's investigation in January of 2016, and he sent the following text to Cox. He said, "What's the worst thing is, good buddy, that I dumped the cell phone for anonymously is stabbing me in the back. Now fix this expletive before I do." Now Cox had been promoted to the head of the drug unit. He went to Wayne County Sheriff Office Management and vouched for the drug unit subordinate 1 soon after the investigation was closed. Now, who is this management that Cox went to? And just off his pure word that they would drop the investigation on this subordinate 1. Who is this subordinate 1? Because we're going to hear more from him later in the indictment of some things that he has done. But who is this management, and shouldn't they be questioned, indicted, or interviewed in that regard? So that's one incident. Subordinate 1. Who is the subordinate 1? Why hasn't he been arrested? Why hasn't he been indicted for his participation in this? Is clearly he clearly committed an infraction. He said, "Worst thing is, good buddy, that I dumped cell phone for anonymously established." So he don't supposed to be dumping cell phones just off whims or without search warrants. Probably. I'm not a law enforcement officer, but that seemed like something you should have a search warrant for. But let me go deeper, right? And so in paragraph 30, right, and I'm going to use the verbiage that they used in the indictment. On March 16, 2017, Cox detained drug trafficker number 2 in possession of 4 ounces of powder cocaine. At this point, drug trafficker 2 agreed to provide information to Cox. Pursuant to his practice, Cox initially thwarted any prosecution of drug trafficker 2 by not opening an official OCA case. Right? So basically, he stopped this guy with 4 ounces of cocaine, which is trafficking, which is a very high level of offense. And he took the cocaine, but he didn't open an OCA case. That means an official case number. That means that case is on the books to be tried in court. He did not do so, right? However, his plans of thwarting the prosecution came to a halt because in March 2017, a sheriff office drug unit detective who was serving as a task force officer with the Drug Enforcement Agency requested a copy of the interview relating to that previous arrest that I just talked about. In response, Cox instructed a subordinate. Now this one, the first one says subordinate number 1. This one just says a subordinate to open an OCA number, write a report, and move 4 ounces of cocaine to the evidence room. So once again, if you know this, who is this subordinate? Who is essentially, by interpretation of the law, trafficking cocaine himself. To move 4 ounces of cocaine to the evidence room. Now, it said a case report was done on April 2017, close to a month after the original traffic stop. Notwithstanding the opening of a case file on March the 16th, which was only a month later, the formal charges were never brought against the drug dealer. Now, once again, if you have this case file, now you have the official case file that has to be registered, with the law enforcement, and I assume with the courts. Who is this prosecutor? Who is this judge that dismisses the case without prejudice. Meaning without any information, without any trial. So that lets you know that this goes deeper than just Mike Cox being a rogue individual. He had connections in the courtroom to make these things go away. He had connections in the DA office to make these things go away. Right or wrong. These things just don't go away. Let me go deeper. In paragraph 36 of the indictment, right? It says, and this proves that he had connections in the DA's office. On September the 18th, 2017, Cox texted the assistant district attorney and requested that the June 2016 charges against drug trafficker number two's longtime girlfriend be dismissed. When the assistant district attorney responded that the charges were not going to be dismissed, Cox texted that he would just talk to you later about it. The charges were eventually dropped and dismissed in 2019. Now that's 3 years later, 2 years later. Now mind you, of course, this is how they do. They let cases linger so people will forget about them. And then, of course, they drop them, right? So once again, who is this DA that had connections with a dirty cop, that dirty cop felt comfortable enough to say, hey, dismiss these? And he initially refused, but then later it says the charges were dropped. And Cox said, I'll talk to you later about it. What did Cox have on this DA? That makes you wonder, right? What kind of relationship did they have? Was the DA tied up in some unscrupulous activities which Cox was able to hold over his or her head? Want to be gender equitable because I don't know. It just says district attorney. But once again, you see the level of corruption goes past the sheriff office and Mike Cox. It goes right deep into the throes and the halls of what we call Lady Justice. In the scales of justice. This definitely shows that the scales of justice are being manipulated by backroom corruption. Backroom favors. And we can go a little bit further. We're going to go to paragraph 39. All right, so in the previous paragraph, it talks about drug trafficker 2 being, arrested. And I think this is after Cox's retirement, right? So this drug trafficker gets arrested. He gets out. At the time, matter of fact, he's not retired. This says at the time, Cox, who was still a sworn Wayne County Sheriff Office deputy, was hosting a cookout with the head of the Wayne County Sheriff's Office Patrol Unit. Now, once again, who is this head of the patrol unit? Because if he's hanging out with this guy, and this guy has a known drug dealer who just got out of jail at his house, he has to either know, be looking away, or be involved in corruption as well. Who is this head of the Wayne County Sheriff Office Patrol Unit who witnessed these interactions? Why is he not listed in the indictment? Why is he not outed as these two gentlemen were yesterday? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Once again, that's how deep it goes. Once again, he's the head of the Wayne County Sheriff's Office Patrol Unit and a defense attorney. Now, as you see in the caption, this defense attorney was listed in the article from the bond hearing on Wednesday. His name is a one Worth Haithcock. Worth Haithcock was at the dirty cops officer's house with the head of the drug patrol unit and a arrested, convicted, whatever, a known drug dealer at this house. And it was then that Cox arranged for the defense counsel to handle drug trafficker two's case. Now, once again, there's an arrangement, right? What they didn't say what the arrangement was, right? Did this counsel owe Cox favors? Or was this counsel indebted to Cox? Did Cox have something on him as well? We don't know. But what we do know is we have this defense counsel at the home of a dirty police officer with a drug trafficker and the head of Wayne County Sheriff's Office Patrol Unit. All three of them, or all two of those other guys, because the other guys are in battle, engrossed in legal battles, but all two of those should be investigated or indicted. Now, he said, following this meeting, Cox communicated with the GPD drug unit and demanded that they turn over drug trafficker two's phone. Now, the head of the GPD drug unit intervened and refused to turn over the phone. Now, once again, what made Cox so comfortable in asking these GPD officers? Once again, we know they're not above corruption as well. What made them so comfortable in asking that officer that? Luckily, I guess for that officer, he refused. But that just goes to show Cox's pull throughout the dual agencies and his recklessness and his brazenness to continue his corruption and his protection of, these drug dealers. As the judge at the bond hearing said, he gave these guys a golden ticket to sell drugs. Let's move on to paragraph 45. And this is very telling as well. So, in this incident, the drug trafficker 2 has allegedly shot another confidential informant, and they detail that in paragraph 44. He has active warrants on him for an attempted murder, right? So here is what happens. 45 says, rather than assist the Wayne County Sheriff Office and Goldsboro Police Department in locating drug trafficker 2. Now, mind you, if I'm not mistaken, Cox has already retired by then. He texted drug trafficker number 2 on February 21st and directed him to go to the shop. And a worker is going to fix you. Now, who is this worker? I don't know. But then he texts the defense counsel at 8:38 in the morning and said, drug trafficker 2 has attempted murder warrant. That means he has a warrant. Like, he's on the run. It's BS. Drug trafficker 2 has got like $1,500 in cash. If you will meet him at the magistrate office just to try and get his bond at $200,000, he said he can make bond if it's $200,000. Let me know if you can help him. Now, the defense counsel responded. He told Cox to inform drug trafficker number 2 to lay low until I call him and I'll meet him at my office. So basically, he's telling this counsel, Worth Haithcock, that is affiliated with someone who has an open or active attempted murder warrant, he's telling him to lay low. Now, in my layman's interpretation, this could be considered either three things. That's aiding and abetting, harboring a fugitive, or even accessory after the fact. Like, he's a counsel, if he knows the whereabouts of someone with an active warrant and he actually tells them to lay low, that's almost, I'm helping this guy. And so once again, why is Haithcock not arrested for, once again, aiding, abetting or accessory after the fact? He's tied up in all of this. He should be right there on the front row, on the front page of every article or every indictment there is. And I'm going to move on because I think we get the point that I'm trying to make here. Paragraph 55 on December 4th, 2020, which again, he's not even a sheriff anymore. He contacted a Wayne County Sheriff Office detective and had them use a law enforcement database to run a Kentucky license plate number. The detective responded that they were having another Wayne County Sheriff employment run the plate. Within 4 minutes of his initial text, Cox was provided with the name and address of the person to whom the plate was registered. So basically, a detective was providing information, law enforcement information, to this retired deputy, this retired crooked cop, for God knows what. He don't know what. That has to be illegal in itself. But more importantly, he didn't do it. He asked an employee to do it. Now, I don't want to implicate that employee to say they knew that it was for Cox. But hey, considering what we know and what we have, heard from all of this, it's. I mean, it's not to be discounted. Here we got who is this detective that's providing law enforcement information? By then, of course, I know everybody knows what's going on. Let's go to paragraph number 66, and I think that's going to be the last one we talk about. 66. After receiving the call from drug trafficker number 1, Cox immediately tried to call the head of the Wayne County Sheriff Office Drug Unit and then Drug Unit Subordinate 1. Drug Unit Subordinate 1 called back and spoke to Cox for about a minute and 48 seconds. During the call, Drug Unit Subordinate 1, there he is again finally, he instructs Cox that the GPS found on drug trafficker 1's car was not a part of the investigation with their office. And at 9:31, the drug unit head called Cox and spoke with him for about a minute and 42 seconds. And based on this, he still had contacts with the drug unit. And once again, he was interfering there with a federal investigation. That means they were interfering with a federal investigation. And I'm going to end with this. In late May 2021, more than 2.5 years after his retirement, he was still able to have contacts with the Wayne County Sheriff Office using sensitive law enforcement databases to provide Cox with information. So we have several players here that need to be included in this indictment and needed to be outed. Subordinate number 1, another subordinate, the Wayne County head of the drug unit, the Wayne County Sheriff head of the patrol unit, the DA that dropped the charges, the people who are dumping the phones, the judges who are dropping and refusing to prosecute the charges. Like I said, this goes deep. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's an intricate network of corruption that has been allowed to operate in this town for years. And once again, my dear brothers who are caught up in it, those two I mentioned yesterday, and actually soon as I did that video, even though the drug dealer in this indictment has not been listed publicly, someone sent me that information yesterday. Just look, just Google what happened on that day, and they showed me, and I had to cross-reference, and I was like, wow, so that's him as well. And once again, there are others that are cooperating with these corrupt officials. But I don't want to harp on that because that's a whole nother different subject. But I will say we in the black community, we have a propensity to protect ratchetness, which means, and when I say that, like, we all know drug dealing is wrong by now, right? We all got relatives who done 20 or 30 years, been killed because of drugs, our parents strung out on drugs, whatever. We've seen the death and destruction of drug sellers and drug users, but we still glorify that. We glorify people who we know are known rats, as they say. We glorify people who, are making money in the streets. But we're also a part of it because, whether you're the baby mama who's getting the new car or the girlfriend who gets the Louis bag or, the auntie who gets $50 every time you see them, we all take part in that. But then when he gets arrested, it's like free him or, woe is me. We know everything that drugs in our community has ravaged. But we still play this game like, it's okay. And then when somebody get locked, we holler and free them. No, we should know by now. There's too many ways to make money rather than sell drugs. Now, once again, I've been in that life, and I'm not claiming, to be perfect. But I know the destruction. Like I said, I just had a friend get trapped off with the feds earlier this year who's already done major years in jail, and he's my age. So what I'm saying is we play this game with each other, but then when somebody talks about or just like I said, me reporting on facts that are already well known, then all of a sudden I become the bad guy. I become the bad guy by talking about what everybody knows is wrong with our community. And we defend that, we defend that destruction. But when somebody is trying to call that destruction into question, or, to change the narrative, or to prevent someone from thinking that is the way to go, then, I become or they become the subject of ridicule, of criticism. But we all know this is a dead end. How many drug dealers have you seen ride off into the sunset? Our way. Unless you're talking about the early 70s or the 80s when cats did get in, make a little money, and start a business or something like that. But this, like making a lifetime, a drug deal, a lifestyle of a drug dealer, that wasn't the intentions. And once again, if you haven't learned by people like, Boot Court or, Ike Atkinson, who did all of those times, who were major drug dealers, they had that prestige and money for a time, but, they spent 20 or 30 years in prison, which you can't get back. You can't get that time back. And that's the most important thing that we have on this earth is time. And the most important thing that defines our time is how we spend it. Money comes and go. And those girls and y'all can say y'all women who benefit from these drug dealers as soon as they get locked up, you jumping down or up and down on somebody else, or somebody else jumping up and down on you. Or you move into the next hustler until they get knocked. So we all are complicit in this lifestyle of drugs. Whether you're selling drugs, whether you're celebrating the drug dealer when he comes around because he has a nice car and he has, nice jewels on. You see what he had on? You see what that? We're all complicit in that lifestyle when we celebrate a drug dealer or we celebrate a person coming home from prison more than we celebrate a person coming home from college or a person coming home from the military or a person who's working a regular job. We all buy into this. So Dag, I didn't mean to get off that rant on that rant, but I want y'all to understand that we are just pawns in their political game. Like they get money every time they arrest a drug dealer and let them out and pay bonds and pay fines and pay restitution and go to jail and be a slave for 5 years working for 5 cents a day and making all of these products and come back canteen money, phone money, J-Pay. You can't tell me that they don't know what they're doing. And you think they want this to stop? No, we gotta stop it. And you see how they throw away their toys when they finish using them, as you see, in these indictments, and you see in other indictments where because if I'm an informant, I'm not going to jail for nothing. I'm not facing no charges. So you see how they play and toy with their tools and they break them after they're finished. So I want everybody to be aware that this is much deeper than Cox and Worth and the quote unquote confidential informants. No, this is a network. This is a elaborate system of judges, of lawyers, of DAs, of bond agents, magistrates. All of this is a business. I'll never forget one day I was in the Goldsboro, Wayne County courthouse, and the bailiff said, "Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. Please stand. This honorable courthouse is now open for business." And that's when it clicked. I said, yeah, this is a business. And we are on the business end, meaning we are the ones that's being recycled through that. We are the ones who are being pawned off or auctioned off, as they said. You read the book The New Jim Crow by Michelle. What's that girl name? Michelle. I want to say Cox, but I know it's Michelle Cox. But you know what I'm talking about. The New Jim Crow. It talks about these things, and we're steady involving ourselves, putting ourselves at risk, allowing our children to think that that's cool. And I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna go. But the first day of the after school program, I told the students of a man who wrote the books that was in jail. One young man raised his hand and said, "Do he get cakes in jail? Do he make cakes in jail?" I said, "You can't make no cakes in jail." He said, "My daddy made cakes in jail." So then I had to stop the whole conversation and explain to him, no, that's not cakes. That's crushed up honey buns and cupcakes mixed with water and stuff. No, you can make a real cake out here. You don't have to go to jail. Like, I had to explain to them, jail is not a fun place. Prison is not a fun place. But of course, when you have that perception as a child and your relatives are going, you begin to think, okay, there's nothing wrong with jail. Yeah, they have fun in jail. They have phone calls. They take pictures. They send them home. They send me drawings. And we begin to adapt to that plan, that plot. Jail is a badge of honor. So this is what we have here. People falling into this lifestyle and getting trapped off in this corrupt system, not just with the cops, but with the corrupt lawyers, with the corrupt, we all know about Charles Gurley, who, I might need to do a whole entire story on him and all the corruption. But ever since I've started doing these videos, people have been calling me with so much information. Let me play this real quick, then I'm gonna let you guys go. Hold on. Let me see if this lady. There's a road that bears off to the left. Okay. Alright, that's code 117. Well, either way, I've known Chris was just dirty as hell for a long time. I ain't got no kind of proof. You know what I mean? But look, old school, you know. You know what I mean? Yeah. Stupid. Exactly. So, anyway, I wanted to call and leave you a message and see if you could round up what the heck's happening with him. Yeah, well, because he's right in there with Cox. Yeah. And I'm like you, it's all And so this lady, let me make sure I'm plugged back up. I don't know if y'all heard that or not. But this lady just tells about, her relatives and her brothers who are in that circle, and how, she's been privy to certain information as well. But you'll be surprised how many people have called me and put their stories out there about this corrupt system, these corrupt cops and things like that. So we're going to keep an eye on this. And once again, I do this with the intention of exposing this corruption. Not putting anybody in harm's way, because once again, most of this information that I share is public knowledge, and so I just want people to take heed to what we're up against, but also avoid those traps. Avoid those traps. With running around here in the streets and putting your life in danger. Like I said, I'm 45. I ain't got no more time to give them. I don't know, 20, like the guy mentioned in the video where I talked about the other gentleman. He was like, Booty and the crew tried to tell everybody who was the law. But, those guys are my age, and I think they got, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. And, they'll be 60-something when they get out. My heart goes out to them. But, once again, there's consequences for the games we play. And I don't think, the amount of money, no amount of money is worth, me having to go to jail and eat soup and noodles and having someone tell me what to do. One time it was, but once again, I didn't even think about the ramification of what I was doing. Fortunately for myself, I never got caught with a large amount of drugs, and I never had to be in a position where I had to cooperate. So, my name is clear. You'll never see my name on any paperwork, regardless of what the one gentleman who, has some kind of issue with me said in the comments of the video. My name is clear. I've never been in any type of situation in Goldsboro because I wasn't even that big of a guy here. I didn't really start making moves till I moved to Virginia. Virginia was so big, like if you couldn't get caught unless, like, I got caught when I got shot and I had drugs on me. That's the only way I got caught. Because most of my clients were lawyers and real estate agents and dentists and funeral home, rich white people, and they use drugs too. But I just want people to clarify, I just came on to clarify that this is a bigger system. It's bigger than Worth Cox, the two informants, Schaefer, and whoever else. This is an intricate system that all needs to fall down. So hopefully this will garner some attention on everyone who needs to fall down. Peace and blessing. Once again, I'm not shy. You can call me, provide information. You can call me and question me on anything that I said. My number is 919-587-7782. Peace and blessings. Y'all have a good night.